Text and Logo, Student Invitational, 2001. SI. Reception and Virtual Walkthrough, originally recorded May 7, 2021 at 2 p.m. PDT. A speaker appears in a video conference window with the SI logo in the corner and her name, Rebecca TRAWICK.
So I want to welcome you to the Student Invitational 2021 Artist Reception and Virtual Walkthrough, honoring the artists included in SI 21. SI 21 represents the 44th year of this long-running honors, course, and collaborative exhibition. My name is Rebecca TRAWICK, and I'm the director of the Wignall Museum. On behalf of the staff at the museum, congratulations to the artists and to Professor LETA MING on a thought-provoking virtual exhibition. I'm pleased to introduce you to the SI lead faculty member who will lead us through the program today. Please welcome Professor of Art History, LETA MING. LETA, the virtual floor is yours.
LETA's video window appears with logo and name.
Hi, thank you. This exhibition is a culmination of a semester-long course at Chaffey that includes some of our most talented art, digital media, and photography students. To be included in the course and exhibition, colloquially known as SI, these artists undergo a competitive jury selection process in the fall. Once they are chosen, they take on the formidable task of creating a completely new body of work for public display in just a matter of months. Normally, we would install the work inside the galleries of the Wignall Museum on the Chaffey Rancho campus. But with the global pandemic, we made a few adjustments, and presto changeo, here we all are on Zoom. Thank you for making this event part of your day. For me and the artists to be able to share what we've been working on for the past several months is thrilling. What's wonderful about SI is that the artists are given free rein to do what they want. Any theme or any medium is fair game. But especially for a developing artist, this level of freedom can be daunting. And I wanted to acknowledge the difficulty of this task that they have accomplished. Moreover, the pandemic placed an even greater burden on these artists. They had to be disciplined enough to work independently at home in their makeshift studios without the specialized equipment that is in our Chaffey facilities and without close contact with their peers or their teachers. At the same time, they weren't alone. Most of the students had family and friends cheering them on, as well as faculty mentors gently guiding them. And this includes many of you who are with us today. Thank you. Thank you for being there, for being here. And the artist and I also wanted to thank Rebecca, Roman, and Andy at the Wignall for their curatorial and organizational expertise to make this exhibition a success. After my remarks, we will go in alphabetical order by the artist's last name, and each artist will give a brief 2-minute presentation about their work. Then we'll have a 5-minute break and we'll hold a question and answer session. To keep things moving, we will run through all 13 of the artist presentations. But don't panic. I did say 13, yes. And so I want you to hold your questions for the Q&A part. But yes, don't panic. There's a money back guarantee. If you don't find all of the talks positively scintillating, I'll give you a link at the end of the talk. Okay, so let's get started.
A website appears with dozens of thumbnails of photos.
You can see we're on the Chaffey College website.
Text, Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art. www.chaffey.edu/Wignall.
Site, specifically on the page for the Wignall Museum.
The cover of a virtual program guide appears with the SI logo.
And on top there, you see there's a guide which you're welcome to look through to see more information about the works and the artists.
The screen scrolls down to the photo thumbnails.
And for the remainder of the artist talks, I will be cycling through the images that are in what's called the gallery. Our first artist is Manny Carabajal, whose online alias is the evocative Baby Parts.
A screen with rows and columns of identical black boxes. The mouse cursor is shaped like a Ouija planchette.
He took advantage of our unique online situation to create a project designed for individual viewing at home. His work is an example of what we call digital art, meaning that it resides in a digital format. In Manny's case, it is in the form of a website, which I will navigate through while Manny says a few words. Go ahead, Manny.
A text box appears with two halves. The left half depicts a cloud with the letters DR flashing. The right half asks a question: what would you like to happen with your Facebook profile when you die? There are two options: participate, artist statement.
Hi, thank you for being here. I created a website that explores the subject of our digital legacy, which is all the information that we leave behind online when we die, and how that information is formed about us. When someone lands on my site, a pop-up appears asking, what would you like to happen with your Facebook profile when you die? If someone would like to answer the question, they can click on the participate button, which takes them to a form on a separate tab where they can enter their response.
A comment box appears with a submit button.
I collect and screen the responses before adding them to the site.
The original text box appears again.
To the left of the question is an animated element. The idea behind this GIF is that instead of something raining down from a cloud, it is all the zeros and ones, the binary that make up computer data, rising up into the cloud, where most of the data about our existence will live long after we die. I think it's been a new and a common experience for almost every one of us, especially during the pandemic, to run into a dead social media profile. And if Facebook continues to grow at its current rate, it's estimated that by the year 2100, there'll be 4.1 billion dead Facebook profiles. We may get to a point where the number of dead Facebook profiles will outnumber that of the living.
The page with the identical black boxes. As the cursor runs over them, the space with the box either turns white or displays a text comment.
I originally conceived the browser space to be occupied by an abstracted graveyard, but that idea evolved into a CSS grid inspired by the Herman grid illusion and images I have seen of data server centers. The interaction between positive and negative spaces creates an illusion of what Ludimir Herman called ghost blobs, which I use to symbolize all of the ghosts living in the machine and all the amount of server space currently filling up with the dead. When the mouse cursor or planchette hovers over a black rectangle, the space reveals the wishes of what someone would like to happen with their Facebook account when they die. I thought the planchette evoked this idea of humans' long instincts to try to connect with the dead, and how many civilizations have used the available technologies during their time to try to get a hold of the dead. Responses from this project were also collected from social media sites like Instagram, Reddit, and Facebook, where the question was posted, and from other participants that have landed on the site since it launched. Based off some of the responses, there seems to be a range of different views and experiences on the topic that have implications on more than just the lives of the individual respondents. So without established social norms or taboos as guides, the rules for how we mourn and treat the dead online are still being written. Larger problems may arise down the line as an American company continues to grow the largest global human archive in modern history and deals with the very real and inevitable data problem of having to decide who to delete and who to save.
The cursor runs over a box with text too small to read.
You can see here one example. It's in case it's hard for you to read. It says, I plan to give my Facebook password to a trusted friend and have them post statuses from beyond the grave every now and then once I pop off. Thanks, Manny.
Slide. A hand-painted image of a smiling white man in a Make America Great Again cap with his arm around a black man wearing a BLM hoodie.
Our next artist, Vincent BLAIR, also shines a spotlight on a current issue facing our nation. But in this case, instead of social media, he focuses on the racial, cultural, and political divide. Go ahead, Vincent.
Hello, everyone. And as you are all viewing this art piece, now I would like to ask you to take 5 seconds and to think of one word that it could possibly represent. I hope we all thought of something along the lines of unity. And so for this art piece, I thought of creating something meaningful that affects many of us. I thought of creating this during the height of the MAGA movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, because there seemed to be such a division between these two movements and in America as a whole. I find that I'm always thinking of new art pieces to create, while at the same time of these movements, this division in America personally affected me in an emotional level. I believe that people should be able to support whatever movement they choose to, and it shouldn't take away from any other movements. All Americans should feel that Black lives matter just as any other life matters. And at the same time, people should not be made to feel bad if they believe in the Make America Great Again movement. We can believe in different movements and still understand that we collectively are all part of the human race, or the human spectrum, in my case, as I would like to say it. So in my art mind, I began thinking of a small way that I can somewhat contribute to closing that specific gap, and thus came up with this art piece, with this painting that I like to call Unity, of course. And my hope is that I could encourage people to be more tolerant of one another through my art. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Vincent.
You're welcome.
Slide. A stop-motion photo of a dimly lit living room. A human-like figure with a striped shirt lays on a couch, its face trance-like. Digital devices sit on the table before it beside a beer bottle. The room is sparsely furnished.
Like the first two artists, our next artist similarly addresses contemporary issues. In this case, it's the cumulative strain of the pandemic quarantine. While DLT, speaks, I will show you some stills from the stop motion video that they created. The full video will be shown after their talk. Take it away, Des.
Hi, everybody. I'm Des. I'm a fine arts major with a focus in ceramics. While pottery and sculptural design is always going to be at the core of my interest in art, I also dabble in painting, photography, sewing, and videography, more specifically animation.
Slide. The human figure sits up, pointing a device toward an off-screen area.
At the beginning of COVID, I really sought to find a way to make clay a little bit more accessible to people who were quarantining at home and kind of glued to their devices. And animation has really allowed me to make sculptures move and to give stories and personalities to pieces that would normally sit rigidly at home or need to be viewed in kind of an exhibit setting.
Slide. The human figure stands nearby two identical white chairs.
My new body of work, The Visitor, is a short stop-motion claymation that was concocted in the early days of the COVID-19 lockdown. Contextually, The Visitor kind of documents the illusion of safety within the four walls of my studio and the great unknown dangers that I was left to face when I turned off all the brain-numbing content on my devices. It illustrates uncertainty, escapism, and subtly mimics the environment that I found myself entrapped in.
Slide. The human figure stares at a TV which plays static.
The clock on the wall is a poorly edited video of the clock in my studio. The couch is made from dish sponges and the towels I use to dab paint on.
The human figure faces the viewer.
And the character, who's modeled with wire, two-part epoxy putty, and modeling clay, is representative of me and my favorite striped shirt, which I wear whenever I paint. Most importantly, The Visitor is a culmination of all of my interests, and it kind of blurs the lines between mediums for me. It incorporates clay, videography, sewing, a little bit of woodwork, and animation, and it allows me to explore the limits of each of those. At the very least, The Visitor is my contribution to the ever-expanding black hole of brain-numbing content that we can all enjoy online. Thank you.
Now Roman will show us the video. It's just over a minute.
The screen goes black. Title card, The Visitor. Text, by DDLT. When the stop-motion film begins, the figure in the striped shirt is laid on the couch in the sparsely decorated, dimly lit living room. Behind the figure, a clock. The second hand ticks. The light quality of the room changes rapidly, suggesting television, as the figure stares at an object off-screen. A television, made of clay, displays an actual black and white film. A human woman point a gun appears in the reflection of a car's side mirror as the car speeds down a residential street. The clay figure sits up, points a remote off-screen, and the room becomes darker. The figure rises and walks in the opposite direction of the TV, behind the couch, passing two wide identical chairs. The figure turns around, facing the living room. The couch and television appear from the clay figure's perspective. A different clay figure sits staring at the television, now displaying static. The second figure rises, shirtless. The shadows on the wall behind the figure in the striped shirt rotate and change. The screen goes black. Logo, DDLT, DesDLT.com. IG, Des de la Torre. Slide. A long strip of paper appears in the middle of the screen. The writing on the paper is too small to read, but it appears to be a list with the text flush right.
The next artist, Nick Del Rosario, also addressed the COVID pandemic. But if Dez's work relied on an actual handcrafted set, Nick's project is more conceptual, and it's centered on his idea of a list of names rather than an object. Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, everyone. So the phrase "life is too short" is a cliche that many of us are familiar with, but not one that we tend to fully grasp. However, the past year has changed that. The pandemic that swept the globe in only a few months has changed many of our lives permanently. I'm starting to become a graphic designer, and I wanted to use my skills to design a piece that discussed ephemerality. The work that you are viewing right now was not my original piece. At the start of this process, I was working on a completely different project, but a tragedy struck that inspired me to change my work completely. My original piece was strictly about the ephemerality of life and had nothing to do with COVID-19. But with the death of my grandmother, Margie Del Rosario, I felt the need to build and use my work as a commentary on how poorly the pandemic was handled. For this, I decided to design the receipt that you are seeing now.
Slide. The top section of the paper strip is clear now. It is a receipt from Toxin, with an address and phone number. Listed below description, on the left of the receipt, is the text coronavirus quantity, followed by a long column listing the number 1. Listed below price, on the right, is a series of names. The top name is Margie Del Rosario.
Putting the names of the deceased in the form of a price on a receipt is meant to convey the concept that the cost of mishandling a pandemic as a society is the lives of innocent people. The names listed on this receipt, my grandmother's included, should not have been gambled with. The political turmoil between those who believe in COVID and those who do not should not have gotten in the way of us protecting our people.
Lower on the receipt, subtotal, 2,886,586. Tax, plus 132,976,286. Total, 135,862,872.
We lost many lives because of our lack of knowledge, our lack of leadership, but most of all, our ignorance. We can sit here and blame everything on the government, and although our elected officials did fail us, we ultimately failed ourselves.
The very bottom of the receipt has a smiley face with the words "thank you." Then a barcode, followed by, "Due to the pandemic, all sales are final. If you have any complaints, please bring it up with your government officials." Then a QR code, advertising further information.
A global pandemic had no place in a political battlefield, and mixing these two had drastic effects on society as a whole. Our job as a society should have been protecting our people no matter if you are affected by the pandemic or not, but we were unable to do so. To the families of those who lost someone during this time, I apologize, and to those who lost their life, we will do better next time.
Nick also created a short video to convey the seemingly interminable number of deaths.
A video plays, depicting a high-speed scroll of the receipt from top to bottom. Slide. A painting of a disembodied face, no head hair visible. The eyes and mouth are closed, and the left hand covers the left eye with a white piece of gauze-like material.
In the next work, we come back to a more traditional, very carefully executed art object, a naturalistic self-portrait, but with a twist. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today. My painting for this exhibition was a tool for me to fully process my experience with the biggest health scare I experienced last year. I was diagnosed with Bell's palsy that left half of my face temporarily paralyzed, and even when I recovered, I dealt with lingering pains. I wanted to capture that pain in this painting, purposely choosing to leave the white of the canvas to isolate where I felt the most pain.
A close-up of the white material.
The stippling with the graphite was my way to depict that tingling sensation you get when your nerves wake up after your foot falls asleep.
A close-up of the closed right eye.
I also wanted a chance to work with creating flesh tones with oil paint. I spent weeks scrubbing paint off my hands because I really wanted to match my skin tone as close as possible.
A close-up of the left hand's fingers.
I also wanted to exclude my neck and created this floating head to represent how detached my face felt from the rest of my body at the time. Working through this painting, I realized that stress was the likely trigger to my diagnosis. 2020 was very chaotic and stressful with COVID and other personal issues. The Student Invitational was my way of actively facing my stress head on rather than ignoring it like I normally do. I want this self-portrait to be a reminder to take a moment to myself and breathe.
I think that's something that we all need to remember.
Slide. Two very similar images side by side, one with a white frame, the other with a black frame. The image is red, yellow, and green light passing through holes on a black surface. A human silhouette is barely visible standing among the light.
Just like Jennifer, the next artist, AMANUEL started out with the idea to make a self-portrait. But he felt compelled to change his project halfway through the semester, just as we heard Nick did, as he was increasingly troubled by the continued conflict in his home country of Ethiopia. Go ahead, Aman.
Hello, hi. Thank you for being here. In making this body of work, I wanted to honor and remember the innocent lives that have been lost in the ongoing violence in my home country of Ethiopia. When I started on this piece, I was interested with how light travels in a dark room and how it interacts with the subject and the camera. I blacked out my studio by sealing the windows with cardboard so light wouldn't enter. I then proceeded to puncture the cardboard to let light pass through the holes and into the room.
A close-up of the white frame half.
The green, yellow, and red in the picture was the light I pulled through a 6-foot Ethiopian flag hanging on the other side of the window. Then by using low shutter speed and moving the camera, I was able to manipulate the small beams of light to capture the trail it creates.
A close-up of the black frame half.
In this image, you can also see the figure in the foreground in the darkened window. And that figure to me grounds the image in a more humane experience. Thank you.
Slide. An image of the word memento, the syllable separated with bullet points, like a dictionary entry. The thumb and forefinger of two hands appear to grip the E and O of the word. Surrounding the hands are notes, business cards, and other paper keepsakes with writing.
The next artist, like Aman, also makes creative use of vibrant, saturated digital images. But ZACK's work was not created with a regular camera. ZACK, tell us a little more about your work.
Okay, so I decided to create a piece that is a documentation of my expired relationships. Thanks to the isolation that a lot of us have been experiencing because of COVID, I've had a lot of time to think about the people that are no longer around me. In this body of work, I reflect upon my past relationships by going through old mementos that I've kept around throughout the years. This includes things like old movie tickets, handwritten notes, childhood objects, and more. I then chose to photograph these objects by placing them on top of a flatbed image scanner. This scanning method allowed me to include my hands interacting with each composition, creating a stronger connection between me and all of the items.
Slide. The word memento with the hands, now with text. Noun, An object kept as a reminder or souvenir of a person or event.
I often struggle to accept the fact that nothing is forever, so using an image scanner to create digital copies of these mementos is supposed to emphasize my want to preserve these memories.
Slide. The left half of the previous slide is now covered with paper items, including the program from a production of Mary Poppins, a receipt, and a lottery ticket. A wipe transition appears halfway down the screen.
After creating my photographs, I arrange them into a video to mimic the way that our minds jump from one memory to the next.
Slide. Now the right half is covered with additional similar paper items.
The video format also allowed me to incorporate more visual and sound elements of the image scanning process into my piece. No matter how hard I try to hold on to the past, I know that death is inevitable, both metaphorically and literally.
Slide. Two hands holding a sticky notes with handwriting.
I show that through my inclusion of definitions as well as my inclusion of certain mementos that are symbolic of death.
Slide. Text, memento mori. Noun, an artistic or symbolic reminder of the inevitability of death.
Ideally, my piece would be viewed as an endless loop on a computer screen or larger projected area to allow for visibility of smaller details. This piece suggests that all relationships, whether they are platonic, romantic, or familial, will come to an end.
A hand among additional mementos. A smiling clay caterpillar with the word love painted on. A hand holds a wand in the shape of a rose.
Thanks, Zach.
A video begins. A wipe transition displays the title slide from earlier, the hands gripping the word memento, surrounded by keepsakes. A wipe. Memento with a dictionary definition. A wipe. The paper items, the theater program, lottery tickets. A wipe. A hand grips the word mori. Text. Noun, a Latin word meaning death. A wipe. The hands among the sticky notes. A wipe. The hands grip memento mori, with definition. A wipe. The hand gripping the rose wand, the caterpillar, additional paper keepsakes. A wipe to a black screen. Slide. An image on a white background. Several smaller landscape images are arranged in a mosaic shape suggesting a flying bird.
With the next artist, Andrei Olgin, we go back to a photographer who creates digital images, but in a more conventional way, using a camera. Go ahead, Andre.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. So for my essay project, I decided to photograph the Inland Empire. But it's important to note that the Inland Empire wasn't the main focus of the project itself. I was more so interested in capturing the everyday scenery and moments that we may more or less come and encounter. In particular with photography, one thing I really like about it is that I can frame the world within an image. And in being able to decide what to include and what to exclude, I can create a scene for viewers to ponder. So the idea that I can get people to fixate on something just by framing it in a photograph is something that really interests me. And it's the main reason why I've chosen photography as my medium of choice.
Slide. One by one, the arranged images appear in close-up. Most are overexposed, ranging from almost completely white to mostly white, but recognizable, shapes. First, a window.
If you've had the chance to look at my images beforehand, you may have noticed that there are no people in them.
Slide. A suburban house.
Despite that, the reason why I photographed these scenes.
Slide. A don't walk sign.
It's because I was drawn towards a sense of a calming human presence in them.
Slide. A playground. Then, trucks in a parking lot.
And one way to describe this is that there's a sense of that maybe someone has been there before, or the sense that there is someone still there. This is something that really drew me to these scenes.
A green field.
So speaking of these scenes, you could say that what I'm after is I'm interested in how these kinds of everyday moments
A storefront.
channel that sense of intimacy and comfort.
Another field.
And you could also say that I kind of want to share this with other people. Because even though I have one response with them, it's not necessary that we all have the same response.
A colored wall in a field.
So I would like all of you, when you're looking at
Power lines beside a building.
images, to think about how these scenes channel your own inner thoughts,
The toe of a shoe on a ledge.
emotions, and experiences, and what you feel and what you don't feel there. Thank you for listening.
The original display shape.
And for Andre's work, he also chose to arrange them into this display that you see as the first image, as he would envisioned them to be displayed in a gallery space.
Slide. 4 images are stacked in a vertical row. From top to bottom are 4 different colored images: white, red, yellow, then blue.
Including human bodies in his pictures. The next artist focused her work exclusively on body parts. Here's Zoe Keim.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. In preparing for this exhibition, I approached my work in a way I really have not attempted to before. I treated this project as a study. In a study, one questions, analyzes, and concludes. And for my study, I chose the subject to be myself, as that is the subject that we all forget to assess. In studying myself, I aimed to achieve self-actualization, the cyclic human experience of reflection, recovering, and growth, and recorded my process in the form of an artistic body of work.
Slide. Close-up of the white image, a human eye. In the space around, we see an unspecific outdoor setting.
To a coherent work that displays my attempt at visualizing the self-actualization process. And through my interpretation, I hope to convey the message of loving and respecting the self. Through the vertical compositional layout of SA, I suggest that a person is composed of different levels. And as the individual ascends each of these levels, they achieve higher and higher levels of self-understanding.
Slide. Close-up of the red image. A shoulder with a spaghetti strap. Behind the red, a small piece of a human head.
The paintings are composed of acrylic paint on mirrors with parts of me painted or reflected in them, but enough bare mirror to allow the audience to see their own reflections in the midst of mine. These mirrors serve to reflect an image back of yourself that informs you of who you are and what you are experiencing. And by including yourself in my work, I want to encourage the process of self-reflection as a participatory event.
Slide. Close-up of the yellow image. Chest and stomach muscles.
I took inspiration from the colors of chakras, which are the various energy points in the human body, and their association with different body parts in order to solidify my color scheme and subject matter. Additionally, I focused on primary colors to express the idea of the basic colors as the fundamental components of the self, and I displayed this symbolism compositionally through the formal elements of each piece. I have an innate need to share, connect, and interact with those around me in a way that combines my personal experience with the collective perspective of others. This principle is my motivation in creating art, and my current body of work aims to fulfill this need through the inclusion of the audience in the work itself.
Slide. Close-up of the blue image. 2 legs.
In calling for the participation of my viewers in self-reflection, I intend to meet the goals of my artistic needs through opening up myself and my experiences and inviting others to do the same. With that in mind, I encourage you to look closely, whether you take that to mean looking at my work or looking at yourself, and to consider the symbolic significance of my mirrors rather than only their literal function.
Slide. 3 sculptures. In each, 4 tiny human silhouettes are holding houses above their head, each house different colors and styles.
In Zoe's work, we saw that deliberate use of fundamental colors, and that's what connects it to Lee's work that you're seeing here. Instead of looking inward, however, Courtney's concept looks outward towards the larger social structure.
Hello, everyone. The concept for my work came from a philosophical question about what types of people are needed to make society function and what roles individuals have in a larger society. With COVID-19, something I was thinking about throughout this work was ideals of individualism versus conformity to community expectations. I decided to focus on how individuals with different perspectives might work together to hold up a portion of their community. When I was building, I wanted to reflect the complexity of society while still making my work aesthetically pleasing and easily understood. And so I chose to work with paper products for the buildings to create the few flat geometric details and to make the figures solid resin forms with minimal identity. I also decided to limit the details because these figures and buildings don't actually exist anywhere. This is a fantasy community that I built from my imagination. For that reason, the individuals and structures of this community are abstracted. The figures are very human in form and pose, but have very little defining features. That way, they can be a stand-in for just about anyone. Even though any trace of identity is minimal, I didn't want these figures to be static pillars holding up the structures. So I modeled them to show the strain in the way they are posed. Similarly, the structures are abstracted because I want many people to be able to relate to the sense of community and not necessarily specific landmarks. The few details I added are things such as simple rectangles for doors and overlapping certain sheets of paper, such as for the roof peaks. I hope you all enjoy my idea coming to life in this artwork.
Slide. An abstract sculpture. Materials depict smoke, fire, foliage, a well, and a lava swirl in the center.
With our next artist, we continue in the vein of three-dimensional sculpture. But as you will see, the aesthetic is completely different. Christy, MORA, it's your turn.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. My sculpture is a manifestation of the impact my biological mother inflicted upon me as a child. I was locked in a room for the majority of my childhood. When the quarantine started, I was completely separated from my world and sent back to a time when I felt the most alone, imprisoned within my own mind with feelings of desertion, rage, and wanting to explode. One night in my studio, I created a shape that is the frame of the sculpture. It was a three-dimensional doodle. I create sometimes with no set direction or goal, almost as if I'm being led. I didn't see for what it was until my husband picked it up and turned it on its side and pointed out it looked like a cradle with a cage over the top.
Slide. The same sculpture, turned sideways.
This horrified me to no end. Once the rush of anger and bitterness fled, I cut away that chicken wire to expose that center. This guided me with ideas that would lead me to the other various items incorporated within this sculptural piece. During this process of this project, I made a replica of my childhood room and destroyed it in an act of therapy. I needed to see it broken and useless. Those shattered pieces are intertwined within the center swirl and throughout the outer sculpture itself. The well in the bottom center, it began because of a statement made to me that my life has felt like someone climbing out of a dark abyss, reaching for the light. It had form, and that form was the bottom of a well where I felt lost and alone. The lighting elements make it striking in the dark as the project was meant to be seen. With the eye emerging suspended in the air above a well that appears to have exploded and smolders with suppressed rage, the image is complete. From my pain comes rebirth. The ashes of my past have me looking towards the future. Thank you.
Also, what's wonderful about her work is that an observer who might be unaware of the history can still marvel at the rather magical manipulation of materials.
Slide. 4 cartoon figures stand side by side. They wear different clothes, but they all smile.
For her textured dimensional services, we switch to a very flat two-dimensional world with our next artist, NICKEY. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. I am a poet, sketch artist, and illustrator currently working on my fine arts degree in illustration. My work is heavily influenced by my love for Japanese manga comics and animation called anime. I have photographic memory, which allows me to conceptualize my work as a visual flowchart of events in order to create new literary worlds and characters. My work as part of the SI exhibition consists of 8 posters based on my novel Commission War.
Slide. A piece of paper with text on the left side describing the image on the right. Character 1, Major Alan Pinkerton. Alan stands with hands in coat pockets. There are images of a biplane and a pocket watch.
Commission War tells the story of 2 opposing World War I spies involved in a world chase and race against time. Through the use of a time machine, these 2 spies accidentally involve 2 teenage fraternal twins from the present time who join their cause and chase.
Slide. Character 2, Zoe Astaire Crenshaw. Zoe wears a dress, high stockings, and has small ponytails. There are images of lizards and one of Zoe's bare back, with a tattoo of a lizard.
I sketched out the outfits and hairstyles of my characters first, and then added their body types into the outfits.
Slide. Character 3, Sam Crenshaw. Sam wears a blazer and has long hair. Images of knives in a box and a motorcycle.
Anime is an artistic style that suits my art style in terms of character flatness, exaggeration, and overall simplistic comic design.
Slide. Character 4, Rose Karlovich. Rose wears a full-length waistcoat. Images of robots and a mechanical control room.
I used a special type of alcoholic marker called Copic markers, mixed with ink to create my characters and locations. which were on mixed media paper and canvas. I found that the markers mixed with ink on canvas added a muted color palette and an unusual raw texture to the location work.
Slide. Location 1, New York City. A sketch of skyscrapers, daytime.
The locations I used have specific meaning from the novel. Location 1 is of downtown Lower Manhattan in New York City. It shows a spy business and apartment building owned by my protagonist's character.
Slide. Location 2, Siberia, Russia. An early 20th century train is parked outside a train station.
Location 2 is of an old railway station in Siberia, Russia. The train is seen from the street view is the time machine itself, as a train.
Slide. Location 3, Hotel d'Arte. A sketch of a hotel on a city street.
Location 3 is a hotel in Buenos Aires, Argentina. This hotel plays a pivotal role for my teenage twin characters involving a misunderstanding of a possible prank.
Slide. Location 4, Tokyo, Japan. A line of buildings on a road. Palm leaves hang nearby.
Location 4, the final location, is a street in Tokyo, Japan. These buildings play a role in locating the hideout of my antagonist character. Thank you.
Slide. A painting of a title card in anime style. Text, sexual abuse, viewer discretion advised. Art includes sexual and physical abuse and harassment. May be triggering to some audiences. Explicit content. #MeToo. Two chibi figures sit smiling around the text.
The last artist, number 13, we're here, is also inspired by anime or the Japanese comic style. However, she uses the style in such a way to address a very painful, traumatic subject. Alexus Elaine RAISTY.
I made a series of 6 paintings called Who Are We Protecting? I made this warning to advise my audience before I go into my work.
Slide. An image of a cat-like face with whiskers. There are ribbons and a bow on top. Slide. A female character's eyes are closed. A series of tentacles restrain her limbs.
In Predator Octopus, I discovered when alcohol marker is laid down first, it will bleed through subsequent paint layers. In this piece, I incorporated cutout newspaper letters and I pasted them onto the canvas to compare sexual predators to serial killers, since both tend to be repetitive offenders. I also drew in gel pen symbols representing small items like pills, alcohol, cigarettes, and my stuffed animal named Pinky.
Slide. A female figure weeps. She is covered in sticky notes. Additional hands appear. Some point at her. Others are holding even more sticky notes.
In One Too Many, I used post-it notes and band-aids as my 3D element. During making this piece, my family member who has PTSD stemming from his own trauma from abuse, he had kicked the hole into the canvas from the backside. I decided to keep the piece instead of starting over by sewing it closed and adding more to make it cohesive.
Slide. A close-up of some of the sticky notes. They read Yateable, Barely Doable, Nobody, Control Freak, Dickhole, Loser. Slide. A female character's eyes and mouth are open. Portions of her body in the shape of jigsaw puzzle pieces are removed. The background depicts a barcode and the text, Proof of Purchase, Object.
I make cute chibi-styled anime characters that are also meant to be political. They bluntly confront and address the horrific pain of physical, verbal, and sexual abuse. I use its adorability like candy as a deliberate tactic to lure in viewers. I wanted to make the characters pastel since they seem to represent innocence.
Slide. 4 actual stuffed animals, and 1 human doll, are attached to a canvas. They all frown.
This series of art is inspired by my personal experiences with abuse.
Slide. A female character is covered in blue and red paint. Slide. 2 paint tubes attached to a canvas. The red tube is labeled sexual abuse. The blue tube, physical abuse.
The tubes are color keyed for self-harm, sexual, and physical abuse.
Slide. 2 childlike characters stand side by side, suggesting the male and female genders. A line of tears streams from their eyes. Text. There are more than 42 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the USA.
In this piece, I made this because I feel the world we live in needs to start protecting children and not abusers. I hope the work inspires you to advocate for children by supporting movements like #MeToo, the Bikers Against Abuse, and other organizations that stand up against abuse.
Slide. A close-up of a human ear, hairline, and shoulder. In the background are lines of small baubles.
Lastly, each gem represents 10,000 of the 42 million survivors in the United States of America.
Thanks, Alexis. I appreciate your sharing your work with us, and I hope that your candid discussion of your experience will spare another child from the abuse that you suffered.
LETA Ming's Live Feed.
It was just by chance that we ended with Alexis and her ELAINE RAISTY and her call to action. But I think it was a particularly fitting place to end because it reflects the sense of duty and responsibility that is strongly felt by the students in this year's SI class. Whether it is facing up to violence against minors or minorities, questioning the actions of community members in the pandemic or in an imagined fantasy world, the students are eager for social change. But they are also willing to be part of that change and are on a quest for personal growth. Through their art, they seek to answer life's tough questions. How does one cope with illness, cruelty, the loss of relationships and loved ones? How does one recover and nurture oneself in a world filled with oppression and conflict? How does one find their way home? So now we can start with our question and answer session.
Mary BEIERLE.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for all your fabulous work and all your good efforts in the middle of pandemic crazy. Congratulations for making it through the process. And that being said, I was just wondering what strategies you used for this Herculean effort, you know, as we still continue through these trying times, so that I can share that with my students. If I don't know who wants to jump in there, but what helped you get through this and not give up on your work?
Des DLT.
I would say coffee, first and foremost coffee. And then something that was really helpful was the sense of community that I kind of had with my fellow classmates in this class, in this course, interacting with them through discourse or through Discord, just interacting with them through, like, you know, message boards or even through Instagram and stuff, seeing that there are other artists out there who are getting their work out, putting in effort, like it really motivates you to do your work too. Well, I can speak for myself, but.
CM Lee.
I'd say I also agree, like having the chat open with my peers was really helpful because I could just send a quick message, be like, hey, this is what I'm up to. What are you guys up to? And also just, if you have those tasks in mind, like doing the simplest one first just to get you started, and then you like get the ball rolling from there.
Baby parts.
I spent a bit of time trying to conceptualize and develop my concept. So it's important for me to kind of take a step back from my project and really think about it. Aside from that, I hand coded all my page. So I hand coded it in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I had to be extremely methodical and organized in making sure that I didn't make any mistakes that were gonna screw things up down the line or my current situation. So very, very organized.
Alexis Elaine Raisty.
I felt like I was making something that could help people, that they can relate to, and I didn't want to not produce all of it and just do some. So I pushed myself really hard so that I could do the whole thing, so then all the aspects that I thought were important would be there. And the support in the Discord was extremely helpful. And my mentor was great.
LETA Ming.
That would be Mary BEIERLE, who asked the question.
Nicholas Del Rosario.
I also will say that what helped a lot was, I guess the kind of basis of SI is we are creating work for, it felt more like we were creating work for ourselves rather than creating it for a class. And I won't say that that motivated, but it definitely made creating feel a lot more fun and self-fulfilling.
CHRISTY and MORA.
For me, I had a lot of hurdles that I kind of had to jump through throughout this whole semester. So being a part of this class actually kind of helped me keep on track and stay focused in some sort of way, because I was jumping through some pretty awful things. And yeah, sorry.
Maria Amanda Nickey.
I just love the fact that I was a part of this small interconnected community of SI students. Like, it's so much bigger than just this class because you get to go outside, you actually get to be an alumni, and I feel like that's what really kept me going through it.
Stan Hunter.
It's such interesting to see the work that came out of this period of lockdown, because we all had sort of a shared experience, which is not normal for like faculty and students to be going through this sort of the same thing, if that makes sense. I mean, normally the students have their lives and we have our lives, but we all had to, it's interesting, it's not like this sort of feeling of like, you know, just starting out, beginning to find your own voice. It's really like a response to this lockdown. And I know that a lot of things came out of my, you know, that have been buried in my closet, and also the whole, just as a culture, having come to a stop. There's a lot of stuff that came to the surface that has been kind of pushed down because, you know, we live such busy lives and there's such distracted lives. And so I see that reflected a lot in the work, and I really appreciated the work. I think a lot of you dug really deep and made work that is really, you know, really relevant and not, you know, student immature or anything like that. I mean, it's like, I thought that you really mined an interesting places in yourself and an interesting time as a country and even world. But anyway, so kudos to all of you. I think that was, I think it's really great. That's all. Thanks.
Rebecca TRAWICK.
Mine is a little bit of a piggyback on Mary's question. You know, we've all mentioned this, that many of you addressed the realities of the pandemic, both personally and globally. But I wanted to ask any of you who would like to respond to this. I'm really curious what it was like for you, if it was a positive or negative experience to be living in your studios, potentially. You know, that oftentimes artists want some separation from that creative space. So I don't know if that, if this question sort of gets at, you know, if you have any thoughts about it, but I'm just curious if what your experience was of like living with your work 24/7, in addition to the other challenges of the pandemic.
Baby parts.
I think it was a positive experience because for me, it was a lot of reflection. I got to reflect a lot on myself, my behavior, future, stuff like that. And I was able to actually put that into my work, which is part of like the experience of living completely online, working, going to school, and all of like the other stuff, totally being online, was part of the inspiration for my project. So I think a lot of good stuff came out of it.
Des DLT.
I agree that it was a positive experience in a lot of ways. It was really cool being able to constantly be in the studio doing work. And while that was great, I do think that there were a lot of negative things about the pandemic, or about like staying in my studio so often. I would definitely describe it as like some sort of cabin fever a little bit, where you see it reflected in your work. I would create much more like polished pieces, and I'm starting to notice that my work now is kind of a little more textured, a little uglier. And I think it really reflects on my mental state because of the lockdown. Also, to be around your work often is kind of, I guess it had an effect on me where I was like, I'm tired of looking at my work all the time. I'm tired of painting all the time. I want to go out and do things like normal things. And then as someone with a compromised immune system, it also required me to kind of focus my efforts on making money off of art and kind of being able to not have to leave. So positive, negative, but as it goes with everything in life.
Zoe Keem.
As for me, living with my work specifically for this project was really helpful because my main theme was like self-reflection. So I don't really have like a set up workspace in my house. I have a very like cluttered small house. I live with a lot of people. So it was just me in the corner of my living room at like 2 a.m. surrounded by mirrors. So that and it was like dark, like so it just really helped me even further self-reflect. And I was just surrounded by myself and only myself, literally, mentally. So for me personally, it was really enlightening to be able to see what I could do when I only had myself to rely on, if that makes sense.
CHRISTY and MORA.
Living with my work, as you know, LETA, I wanted to destroy it once it was finished. I still kind of do. But it taught me to be able to rely on myself this year. I used to be able to rely on a lot of different factors, but this year I really had to focus on myself. So that's what I got out of this, was focusing more on myself and healing my own personal demons.
AMANUEL GETACHEW.
For me, it was a positive and negative experience. Positive being I got to work every day and I got to live through everything, live through the whole process and waking up every day and doing the same thing. But in the negative of it was, I don't know if anybody else had this issue, but every time I get to see my work, I want to start over again, and I'm too self-critical. And I don't know, being able to like work from home, you can't escape that. But that was my take on it.
Maria Amanda Nickey.
I think that my take was very positive because one of the things about my work is I usually don't get to work on my own stuff. I'm usually working on like stuff that professors have me do or stuff that friends have me do. And so for me to actually just jump out of that and just actually explore my own work, my own style, my own technique, that was amazing. That felt freeing, just like freeing for once, because I finally got to see what I could do and what I wanted to do. And I was like, all right, you know what? I've been working on this book for over 13 years. Now is the time to get it out there, to get my message out there, to basically have people interested in an actual, hardcover bound book, in actual 2D animation, which I always have felt like if you're going to do animation, it should be traditional. It should be not going digital. It should be, basically using a pen, using ink, using colors. Like I've always loved that. And so for me to be able to do this in SI was just the coolest thing.
ALEXUS ELAINE RAISTY.
I thought it was a positive experience, but I'm really accustomed to using my room where I paint, but I kind of like it more that way because it's like private and then it's just you and your art and you're already in the area that you're actually comfortable with. So I feel like it's easier to do it from my room.
CJ JILEK.
I guess my question for the students is that since this SI event was so virtual and so different from others that we've put on before, I'm wondering if there's anything that stands out from this process and the way that it was produced that you feel has given you a lot of confidence for going out into the rest of the art world.
AMANUEL GETACHEW.
To be honest, the biggest thing I got from this was like that I could take away is like perfecting my process and being able to like work with like different processes and how to like master that. If that makes sense, yeah.
Baby parts.
Yeah, this was such an enriching experience for me, and this is what I really, really, really needed at this point in my educational and professional career, because I really needed something where I kind of could tinker more with like code and figure that aspect out. And now with the stuff I've learned with like prototype and design and website stuff, I'm able to go from prototype and design to a live site. And it's such a powerful thing. Like, and I'm so excited to start exploring more of it and doing more of it. But this was such an awesome experience.
Des DLT.
Again, to bring up the sense of community that I kind of got from this class. When I first started, I was really worried that we weren't going to have that sense of community just because we weren't like face-to-face in a classroom setting. But something that I was really able to take from this class is the different ways that different artists kind of develop their work. Because everything was so virtual, and because we had to kind of see our classmates go through the process of creating this new body, I learned a bunch of different techniques on how to like approach work, how to stay motivated on my work, how to like produce things virtually and stuff like that. So like my classmates were a huge resource for how I will approach my work in the future. I think that's my biggest takeaway.
Rebecca TRAWICK.
I don't want to jump in line, but I actually have a question that I hope is really a quick response question from all of you. I'm just curious how many of you will continue with the same themes that you've explored in SI. I'm sure some of you are ready to move on, but others, you may feel like you want to dive in deeper.
Maria Amanda Nickey.
From an illustration point, I'm definitely going to continue with the SI program. Like, I loved what I got to do for my work. So I think for me, I'm probably going to just go back into like other forms of poetry, look at maybe how I can do artwork based on that, look at maybe how I could do other short stories and do like other works. So yeah.
Baby parts.
I think this work has more of a early internet art aesthetic, and I want to elevate this now that I kind of know more of the coding and design part to make it more of I don't want to talk about it too much, but yeah, you'll see.
CM Lee.
So I'll probably take a break from this specific idea that I had for this project, but I'll come back to it later because in the process of it, there were so many other like avenues of thought that I wanted to explore that I just didn't get to this semester. So maybe in the future, I'll explore those.
Alexis Elaine Raisty.
I probably would continue because I think there's like more topics and things that can incorporate into it and still continue the series. And I like the style.
Nicholas Del Rosario.
I think in terms of this project, I'm gonna kind of leave it there, this piece, but I do like the themes that I explored. Before this, I usually only designed for fun or for kind of, whatever I really wanted to, but I think I enjoyed exploring more of designing for a social and political cause that I care about.
Zoe Geem.
Similarly to Courtney, there's facets that I could still explore in my piece and I would eventually like to one day. But I don't like to like linearly repeat like what I'm doing. I feel like I enter a stalemate when I do that to like personally for me. So I'm probably gonna explore other things and then come back to it later on.
Des DLT.
I think that I will continue to kind of work on animation, but that being said, I also, this project has really made me realize that I enjoy a lot of aspects of like photography and videography as well. So I definitely see myself kind of exploring those areas for a while and then maybe revisiting this. As far as like concept, I would like to probably not think about COVID for a while once things are a little bit better. So I might take a break from that concept.
Nicole Farrand.
One of the questions I was thinking about is kind of more technical. Did you have any technical or discoveries or things you discovered about the medium through this process? Like I know Vincent was drawing more with colored pencils and things, and now I see he's working in paint. I think Amanda mentioned using the Copic marker. So just anything you discovered or tips you might share. I'm just curious about like kind of technical discoveries.
CHRISTY and MORA.
I discovered plaster and chicken wire to be kind of like one of those things I could manipulate in any way, shape, or form. And so that kind of drew me in during making my portfolio for the SI. And I was like, okay, I have to do something with chicken wire and, and ceramics. So I wanted to do a mix of materials because I've studied the painting and the ceramics and sculpture. And so combining all of those together for me is, I want to take it to the next level. I do want to go farther with it.
ZACK GIBSON.
I've never really made a project like this before because it combined well, I've combined things in the past, but like this was like sort of photography, sort of video, and it also had sound elements. And I never used an image scanner in the way I had before. So a lot of this for me, I feel like was experimenting and seeing kind of what worked and what didn't. And then I took what I liked and ran with it. And I just had to I had an idea of what I wanted and I had to plan and I had to make sure that I was meeting a certain goal. And then I had other experiments I could do, but if it didn't work, it's okay, but yeah, it was a lot of experimenting, playing with new things like sound. I never even though it was really simple, I wanted it to be a multi-sensory experience as opposed to just the photographs on the scanner. So that's why I made it a video and added sound and stuff like that too.
Jennifer Escobar.
Yeah, the one thing I took from this was to explore more with mixing medias. Hold on, excuse me.
Jennifer doubles over.
It's kind of why I haven't been talking is because I like to joke around that I have COVID lungs because I did get COVID earlier in the year. So the after effects, it sucks. But yeah, I want to explore more with mixing media. So oils with acrylics or charcoal and graphite. That's kind of what I took mostly from this because I did do oil and I implemented some graphite. So I want to play more around with that.
Baby parts.
I think my medium's a little different because it's the internet. I mean, what is the scale of my medium? What is the textures of my medium? So playing with the internet as a medium was a little different, but I had fun with it. For example, changing the cursor to a Ouija board planchette. That's an element of my medium that creates quite a different experience that I couldn't get from other things or other mediums. In addition, I'm using the internet where I'm not hosting or displaying content. I'm using it in other ways where I'm actually trying to form it in the way that I need to. So that was kind of a technicality of my medium that was fun experimenting with and learning from.
Zoe Geem.
I found out it was actually really, really difficult to paint on mirrors. If if your paint layers are too thin, it crumbles when you paint a new layer on, or if they're not dry, if not 100% dry, they also crumble. And I didn't use a primer, so I don't know if you need a specific primer or you just need to be really meticulous with your paint layers or else the whole thing goes awry. And I had to use acetone nail polish remover multiple times to erase the entire thing before I got it right. So yeah, be very careful if you ever want to paint on mirrors.
Maria Amanda Nickey.
I've never done storyboards before, and I really had to kind of just do a deep dive and really look into it, really see how characters could be displayed in different ways, seeing if I was going to do full characters, half characters, maybe just the portrait of the character. So that's definitely something that I was looking into. And I think another thing too was I'd never taken markers to canvas before. And that was really interesting just to find that out, to see the different grainy texture it gave and the muted colors, because the markers themselves actually are super bright. And so when I mixed the ink with it, I was like, oh wow, these colors look so different.
Andre Jose Alguin.
Originally, I was so fixated on the idea of how are my images going to look like in person. But once that kind of got thrown out the window, I had to deal with how it was going to look like in a file. And because I like to play with transparency with my images, one thing I really liked was how the images were melting away in the background of the file. So that's something I really do want to play with in the future. How can I play with transparency? How can I get even just the background of the file to kind of blend with the work? And with a lot of these...
the mosaic artwork appears.
I'm not sure what you call them, but there's these really thin, flexible monitors now that are coming out onto the market. And I'm not sure where they're going to be in 10, 20 years, but they might be very exciting to play with, especially with some of these more transparent images. So that's something I'm looking forward to. So it's not something I'm going to do anytime soon. I'm going to wait till I like the technologies out there, but it's something I'm thinking about now, given what I've experienced.
CM Lee.
I also did mixed media, but it was like very minimal, just the resin and like the different paper stuff. And working with the resin for the first time is so interesting. Like colors look so different after everything's cured.
A close-up of the sculpted figures holding the buildings.
And then making those work with the other colors and the other mediums I chose. I did so many experiments in the beginning, and I just eventually you just have to say, okay, this is the way it's going to be, and I'm going with it.
Alexus Elaine RAISTY.
During my thing, I discovered that I could use the projector like they did in history to project my art bigger so that I can trace it to save time, and that the alcohol marker would bleed into the acrylic paint.
The image of the chibi girl in front of the barcode and the text, proof of purchase.
I figured out how to stretch out barcode so that I can put the vintage Barbie lingerie barcode onto the background of the object piece, which was fairly interesting because I had to find out the correct way to screw it without making it too blurry to
The frowning stuffed animals on canvas.
transfer when I was doing the projector, and making sure that it was clear enough that I can see it and not look weird.
Nicole Farrand.
A lot of you talked about how freeing and interesting it was to be able to kind of do a deep dive on work that wasn't related to assignment. If you were in charge of all art education, would you as students, do you think there, and I'm not looking for an answer here, I'm seriously curious, do you think art education should move back to the direction where we have less kind of focused assignments on objectives, and go back to the time where a professor might walk in and say, okay, your assignment is make a painting, and then they walk out and you have to figure out how to do it. I think some of us who are now faculty went through that experience, and now we're kind of learning how to teach in a different way. So I'm just sort of curious if you think there's value in foundation level courses sort of giving you assignments that are more specific, or do you think it would be more fruitful for you as future artists and the artists that you are now, just to work kind of more free form, sort of? Does that make sense, the question?
Marie Amanda Nickey.
So I don't really come from an artist background, and I didn't even get a chance to take any art classes in high school. So if I didn't have the classes from professors for, basic artwork, I would have died. I mean, I would have needed to be with the professor so long and being like, okay, do you want it to look like this? Does this work? Is this a failure? Is this looking great? Yeah. I think just having me jump in and do my own work right away, I would have freaked.
Andre Jose Alguin.
I remember in high school, my art teacher, he was the kind of person to be like, okay, this is what we're doing. You work on your work until the bell rings. And that was kind of it. I mean, he wasn't lazy. I mean, he actually did teach us techniques, but it was very free form. And then I had other professors who were like, okay, I have all the assignments in the schedule. This is your time, get to it kind of. And they'll be walking around making sure we're doing our work. And I feel like both approaches will really depend on the personality of the student. For me, I really do appreciate being pushed to do an assignment because it forces me to get out of my comfort zone and really try out new techniques I otherwise wouldn't do. But at the same time, once I've been pushed out of my comfort zone, I appreciate having the freedom. So it's this weird place of where is the best place to start depending on your personality. And it's also very important to avoid it, I guess the teaching style that goes against it too. So for me, I would have appreciated being pushed early on. I think that would have really helped me out. But for other people, that really does push them away from art. So it's this very thin line, unfortunately. Yeah.
Zoe Geem.
I think that the foundations are super helpful. And I really like doing all the basics when I take new classes because I think it's really valuable to learn them and to be able to like practice them and perfect them and all that. And then maybe later on in the course or in your like artist like experience, you do more conceptual things that are more personal to yourself. But I find structure in art classes and classes in general to be really helpful for myself to really get down the material. So yeah, I like foundational work and then conceptual, like a mixture.
Nicholas Del Rosario.
I personally prefer, I like to call it structured freedom. So I like the freedom of like a very vague assignment, but it's still structured. And an example of that is right now for Cabrina's class, who I know she's in the call right now, we're making a brochure, and the only kind of instruction was create a brochure for an organization, nonprofit organization that, you know, you like. And, you know, I think that gives enough structure to where we have a goal, but it leaves enough freedom to where we can kind of explore that ourselves.
Christiane Mora.
I like the structured assignments just because I too am learning. I've been studying art for the last 5 years. And I love all aspects of art, anything I can get my hands on, really. So with the structured stability and learning more as I go, I like that.
Baby Parts.
I just feel like I took so long to like get all these skills, and then now that I'm towards the end, I don't really have time to like do the kind of work that it kind of has like the voice that I feel I want in my work. But I say I have an appreciation for both, because when you have parameters, it kind of leads me to think of creative solutions, to kind of think of things that I wouldn't originally think if I just pursued something I wanted. So I like both.
Emmanuel GETACHEW.
I wanted to echo what Nicholas said about structured freedom, and I feel like that's, at least for me, this class worked perfectly because we had a goal to meet, and I was able to, instead of working on projects that I'm like given, I am taking the initiative to find like Manny said, find creative solutions to reach my goal. And I feel like this helps individuals better, because you get to work on your own process and perfecting that rather than following somebody else's process. But yeah, that was my insight.
CM Lee.
So I really like the way my other classmates put it, but I'd just like to add, like, with how short a semester can seem sometimes, with how fast it goes, I think it's important to have like some of the assignments be really structured and like have clear objectives, but then kind of let the reins go, like that structured freedom and everything, and then be like, okay, here's a vague objective, take it how you will, especially with like maybe the last couple projects or a final assignment.
Des DLT.
I really agree with Nicholas's structured freedom. I think that's a really good way to put it. I used to really like structured learning. Some of the best art that I feel like I've personally made has been under the supervision of like professors here at Chafee, and it's been very like structured in a setting where like I had a due date that I needed to, and I needed to hit all of the marks in order to get in order to get full credit. But I think that the pandemic the lockdown has really shown that there's a need to kind of like analyze the context of it for every student, for every individual. I think that it's good for some students to have that structured learning, and it's cool to learn all of the foundational things you need to learn in order to create pieces. But I think there are definitely times in which artists suffer and need time to just suffer through art. And I think, again, speaking for myself, but so context is like very important. Now I think that the freedom that we experienced with this class and, like the way that it was structured, or had a lack of structure, I guess you could say. It was really freeing, and it was almost therapeutic to me. So
LETA MING.
Thank you for joining us once again. It's really been our pleasure to share with you our work, and I am going to say bye, and Rebecca's going to say the last sentence, and then you can go along your merry way. But stay in touch. Keep in touch with us.
Rebecca TRAWICK.
Thanks, Lita, and congratulations, artists. We're really proud of you. I want to thank everyone for attending today, and a reminder to please visit the website and take a closer look at your own pace at the artist's excellent work.
Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art. www.chaffey.edu/Wignall.
That's it. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations, and take good care.
Text and logo, Student Invitational 2021. SI.